are brainwashed. I don't understand how you guys can support the killing of 40,000 people over the past 3 weeks, but yet when Trump bombs Iran, this is what they were asking for. They were asking to be bombed so that the government can go away. Now you guys are upset that like an elementary school of children was killed. Well, what about all the 40,000 people that were killed before? This doesn't make any sense. You guys are fake humanitarians, and you guys are brainwashed. It's delusional. You guys don't make sense.
The message for the people of Gaza is going to be more of the message that should be sent to the people here, in that they have achieved victory. We haven't done anywhere near enough. And the people here, I promise you, we do feel ashamed. We do feel like we're not doing enough. We do feel like change needs to come, because change must come. And in the form that it must come is that this empire, the American empire that's been hurting our people since the beginning, the imperial Western powers that have been hurting our people since the beginning, they must fall. And inshallah they will fall. And my message to the people of Gaza and the oppressed peoples across the world is that there are people here, both young and old, who are going to be willing to fight and are willing to put their lives and everything they can on the line to bring these empires down, because they must come down.
What's going on, everybody? I appreciate you guys for watching me and rocking with me. But listen, we got to talk about this clip, because the moment I saw that, I said, hold on, what is going on here? Did you see the white lady standing next to the dude that we just watched a clip of, like she was held hostage? Because I'm serious, like the body language alone looked like somebody realized halfway through the conversation that they were way in over their head. And the reason why is because Ana Kasparian got absolutely smoked. And this exchange we're about to see in a second on this video you see on the screen by an Iranian woman who basically could not believe what she was hearing from these American liberals. Like, she was genuinely flabbergasted watching these folks continue to show sympathy and support for the evil, wicked regime that took over Iran. And we're talking about a regime that oppressed its own people for decades. And now that parts of that power structure are finally getting pushed back and eradicated, you still have people over here in the United States acting confused about why anyone will be celebrating that. And this is what makes the moment so wild, because you can literally see the difference between someone who actually understands what the regime has done to people and someone talking about it from a studio thousands of miles away. And the Iranian woman in this conversation is basically sitting there listening to the argument. You can see the disbelief on her face. Not even anger at first, just pure disbelief. Like, she's trying to figure out how people in the West keep bending over backwards to frame the Iranian regime in some kind of sympathetic light. And if you ever watched the Young Turks before, then you already know the general angle they tend to take on foreign policy. I mean, um, it's a liberal network, and a lot of times the conversation immediately shifts into criticizing America, criticizing Western influence, talking about imperialism, all these big academic sounding concepts. Now, look, nobody is saying the United States has been perfect, not even close. But what happens in these conversations sometimes is that the focus gets so locked in on criticizing America that people start downplaying just how brutal some of these regimes actually are. And Iran is one of the clearest examples of that, because the government running Iran isn't just a regular political government you disagree with. It's a theocratic regime that basically means religious leaders control the state and enforce their interpretation of religious law on everybody. And we're talking about a system where women can literally get arrested for how they dress, where political dissent can get you thrown in prison, where protest gets crushed hard, and where people have risked and lost their lives just trying to demand basic freedoms. And we've seen that play out over and over again over the last few years. Students, women, workers, regular citizens taken to the streets demanding change. One of the biggest flashbacks came in 2022 when Mousa Hamani died after being detained by Iran's morality police. Her death sparked massive protests across the country, women cutting their hair in protest, people chanting against the government, entire cities erupted in demonstrations, and the government's response: crackdowns, arrests, violence. So imagine someone who actually comes from that background, sitting there listening to Americans casually talk about the situation like it's just another political talking point. And that's the moment you're about to see, because the Iranian woman in this conversation is basically looking at Ana Kasparian like, do you actually understand what you're talking about? Because to her, this isn't some theoretical debate about geopolitics. This is lived experience, people she knows, people from her country dealing with the consequences of that regime for decades. And this is why her reaction is so powerful, because it exposes the massive disconnect between people who have actually lived under that system and people over here trying to explain it from a distance. So before we break this whole thing down, I want you to watch the clip first so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and check this out, family.
I hate the regime in Iran.
Right.
I hate the regime.
So why
in Iran.
wouldn't you want
I
it
hate
changing?
the mullahs. There are Armenians living in Iran right now who hate the mullahs. Okay, but regime change should not be spurred by the United States and Israel, which wants to install.
You don't hate the regime in Iran. You don't hate the Islamic Republic. You hate us. You hate every single woman who get beaten up, who go to prison, who get lashes for the crime of just simply dressing like you. You hate us because you give misinformation to international community right now. Absolutely darkness in Iran because of the internet shutdown. Iranians have no voices, but you go on Iran, on Iran talking everywhere to international media and giving wrong information. You say that the Iranian people do not want regime change being imposed by Trump administration or Prime Minister Netanyahu. Who said that? Iranian took to the streets since 2009, 6 major uprising, and they made it clear that this is the people of Iran who want to change the regime. And then you saying that this is external regime change. When you say that, it just reminds me of the time when I launched my campaign against compulsory hijab. Ilhan Omar, the hijabi congresswoman, said the exact same thing, accused me, saying that smear campaign everywhere. She said that Masih Alinejad is the mouthpiece of President Trump and her campaign is being pushed by Trump administration. And guess what? The day after, the Iranian state television used her information to attack me. And a month later, Ali Khamenei, the leader of the Islamic Republic, used the same narrative, saying that that American agent must be killed. Yes. With the same narrative, he ordered my killing. And guess what? They hired killers to kill me on US soil 3 times. Now you're doing the same thing by accusing Iranians being led by Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump, by accusing them promoting external regime change. You are actually giving excuse to Iranian regime to slaughter Iranians, to kill innocent and unarmed protesters. This is what you're doing. And stop doing that. If you decided to keep silent, that's fine. But when people of Iran are being banned from internet, they don't have a voice, don't go on media and talk on behalf of them. Let us talk. Let us talk. Because of your narrative, right now, thousands of people have been killed in the streets because the Islamic Republic officials took on state television saying the exact same thing that you said, that this is external regime change being led by Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. It's not. We, the people of Iran, being trapped by a barbaric regime, by a terrorist regime. And they are slaughtering people. They are killing people. More than 2,000 people have been killed. We are the East Germany. Be brave and stand with the people of Iran. If you cannot, then don't help the Iranian regime to kill us with the same accusations. Is that too much to ask?
Now, here's the part that really exposes what's going on in conversations like this, because what you have to understand is that for a lot of these media personalities and political commentators, the reaction is almost automatic. If the president supports something, if the administration is moving in a certain direction, if the United States government takes takes a particular stance internationally, then for a lot of Democrats in the media, the job description is basically to go the opposite direction, anything against Trump. TDS, right? Trump derangement syndrome. And the instinct is to dissent. The instinct is to oppose President Donald Trump. The instinct is to frame whatever America is doing as the real problem in the situation. And when that mindset becomes the default, you start seeing some really strange arguments come out of it because these same liberals out here who constantly claim they are oppressed in the United States, the reality is if you've been born and raised and only lived in this country, you really have no idea what real oppression actually looks like. And I'm talking about the kind of oppression where the government controls your daily life, where you could be punished for speaking out, where basic freedoms that we take for granted here simply don't exist. And that's why the conversation around women rights in this context becomes so crazy, because you have activists over here in the United States who constantly say they stand for women's rights. They say they want women to thrive. They say they want women to succeed and have freedom and opportunity across the world. But then somehow those same voices will turn around and act like the United States is some kind of oppressive country while downplaying what women are actually dealing with in places like Iran. And you'll even hear some of them make these ridiculous comparisons, suggesting that women in America are somehow just as oppressed, or in some cases, even worse off than women living under regimes like Iran. And that's when you really start to see how disconnected some of these conversations have become. Because when people say things like that, it just shows either a level of misinformation, a lack of understanding, or maybe they're just being completely disingenuous. So when you see an Iranian woman step into that conversation and challenge it directly, it hits different because she's not speaking from theory. She's not speaking from a political script. She's speaking from the reality of what that regime has actually done to people in her country and to her as well. And that's why moments like this matter, because it's refreshing to see someone willing to stand up and push back against narratives that try to sanitize or defend what is, at the end of the day, a wicked regime. And I'm glad there are people like her willing to challenge voices like Ana Kasparian and others who keep trying to frame that situation in a completely different light.
While women in Iran are risking their lives to get out of their hijabs, white liberal women in America are fighting to wear them. Videos and pictures of the anti-regime protests in Iran are already limited thanks to the Islamic regime cutting off internet for its citizens. And this white liberal woman on Twitter is telling people to stop sharing the footage. Why? Because all of these people are showing their internalized Islamophobia. Imagine being so brainwashed by liberalism, you no longer support women's rights. Just a reminder, this is Iran before 1979, and this is Iran in 2022. The Iranian people have been oppressed by the Iranian regime for 47 years, including human rights violations and sadistic crimes against women. That's not Islamophobia. It's called fighting to get your freedom back.
Iranian woman here. It's become very apparent that you haven't been listening to anything that we've had to say for the past 2 years. But I was wondering if you could just lend me a few minutes of your time in this ungodly hour to hear us now. We've had to watch over the past 24 hours people clambering onto the internet to exclaim that Iran has the right to defend itself. In what capacity have you distorted the story to make the Islamic Republic the victim? That's I think what we're most curious about. When we were screaming for the past 2 years that they were lynching us, where were you? When we were screaming that they were killing Iranian women for not wearing a hijab, where were you? When they were lynching Iranian men from cranes for protesting, where were you? When we were explaining that this is a terrorist occupying force, where were you? But all of a sudden, everyone's graduated from Instagram School of Law to say that this is a violation of international law and Iran has the right to defend itself. First of all, you're not talking about Iran, you're talking about the Islamic Republic. What the Islamic Republic does is not a reflection of the Iranian people. We've been clear about what we want, which is peace. Second of all, you may have discovered the Middle East yesterday, but the Middle East didn't start existing yesterday. If you want to talk about an act of war, just a few days ago, a federal court determined that the attacks on Israeli embassies and Jewish centers in Argentina were conducted by the Islamic Republic and Hezbollah. That was in the 90s. That was in the 90s. Was that an act of war? How about the terror proxies that the Islamic Republic has created to foster regional instability? What did you think that they were there for? What did you think Hezbollah was there for? Hamas, Houthis, the militia groups in Iraq and Syria? Did you think that they were there to instigate a system of public schooling, education, to feed the poor, house the unhoused? What did you think that they were there for? Is that an act of war? Was October 7th an act of war? Are the rockets that Hezbollah fires into northern Israel on a near daily basis an act of war? And so when these senior IRGC commanders meet up with Hezbollah in an IRGC military base, okay, not an Iranian embassy, and Israel strikes, your response is to say that that is an act of war. If you had listened to us for the past 2 years, much less the past 45 years, you'd know that Iranians don't want war with Israel. We want peace with Israel. Iranian people inside of Iran have come out and said this over and over and over again. It's you that wants war with Israel. It's your hatred for Israel and your hatred for Jews that's pulling us into a war that we didn't ask for. Have we not suffered enough for the past 45 years that we now have to be used as pawns for your fantasies about war with Israel? Leave us alone.
خدا اینها را خلق کرده برای اینکه وسیله غذای مردم باشه و یک قسم حیوان خلق کرده و اون زنها و خانمها هستن. اینا عین گاو و گوسفند هستن، حیوان هستن، و خدا خلقشون کرده برای استفاده مردها، فقط واسه که مردا وحشت نکنن این زنها را به شکل خود انسان خلق کرده. اگر نه اینها عین همون گاو و گوسفند و عین همون اسب و شتر و الاغ هستن، مثل گاو و گوسفند.
Well, family, you heard it right there, straight from the horse's mouth. That's not somebody on the outside guessing about what life is like over there. That's someone explaining the mindset that exists inside that system. And what you're looking at, right? Basically, when you seen the woman talking, what they were talking about is something people have been talking about for years when it comes to the Iranian regime. Women are not treated like equal citizens under that system. They are treated more like property, like something that needs to be controlled, managed, supervised, almost like livestock, horses, cows, mules, sheep. That's the mentality she been describing, these women been describing, these Iranian women in the clips that we have seen in the video today. And when you actually look at the laws and the structure of that government, you start to understand why the Iranian woman was saying that. Under the regime in Iran, women are forced to follow strict dress codes. If they don't wear what the government considers proper clothing, like the mandatory hijab rules, they can literally be detained by what's called the morality police. We've seen women arrested, beaten, and in some cases killed after being taken into custody for violating those rules. The case that woke the world up to this again was Masa Amani in 2022, who died after being detained by those same morality police for allegedly not wearing her hijab properly. And that one incident alone sparked nationwide protests because millions of people in Iran already knew exactly how oppressive that system was. And beyond the dress code laws, there are all kinds of legal restrictions that treat women differently than men. Things like marriage laws, travel restrictions in certain circumstances, testimony, weight in court. The system is structured in a way where women do not have the same level of autonomy or freedom that men have. And that's just a reality of how that government operates. So when the Iranian woman is explaining how women are viewed and treated under that regime, she's not exaggerating for effect. She's describing a system that millions of women have been forced to live under for decades. And that's what makes the reaction from some Western activists so confusing to people who actually come from those countries. Because at the same time, all of that is happening, you got liberal women here in the United States who brand themselves as pro-woman, pro-feminism, fight the power, smash the patriarchy, all of that. They organize marches, they organize protests, they talk constantly about women's empowerment and women's rights. But then, when it comes to regimes that actually enforce harsh, restrictive rules on women, suddenly the conversation gets soft. Suddenly people start making excuses. Suddenly the criticism gets watered down. And that's why the Iranian woman's reaction hit so hard in this moment, because from her perspective, it's unbelievable to watch people who claim to be champions of women's rights bending over backwards to defend or downplay a system that treats women the way that regime does. To her, it doesn't make sense. And honestly, to a lot of people watching it, it doesn't make sense either. It's unreal. It's really unreal. And it's a trip over there, man.
Illegal for a woman to sing solo in public. You cannot dance in public. So basically, if you're a woman and you're having fun, it's illegal. You cannot have a party. If man and woman are together and the state finds out, they will raid your home. So you can get arrested for the music, for dancing, or just simply being in the same room. You cannot openly have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Relationships outside of state-approved rules are criminalized. Kissing your partner in public is illegal. It's punished under Acts Against Public Morality, and the consequences include prison, fine, arrest, or up to 74 lashes. Your phone isn't private. The calls are monitored, the texts are searched, and so if you're saying anything against the government, you might disappear the next morning. So it's not just women. Being a human under the rules of Islamic Republic is hard enough, but animals aren't spared. Dogs are considered najis, which means impure, so if you're walking one, you can get detained or fined. There's a lot more to it, but I cannot summarize 47 years of cruelty in 1 minute video, so I will share more later.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy, man. And that's why when people over here in the United States start talking about how oppressed they are and all this kind of foolishness, I'm like, man, if you don't miss me with all that, you don't know. Y'all don't know what oppression is. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all don't know oppression. If you are born here in the United States of America, you literally hit the birthplace lottery. Straight up. You hit the lottery. We are the top 1% when it comes to countries in this world. And people don't like hearing that sometimes because it messes with whatever narrative they're trying to push. But it's the truth. There are people all over the world who would trade places with you in a heartbeat. They wouldn't think twice about it. They wouldn't have to sit around and debate it. They would be gone tomorrow if they had the opportunity, especially women in a lot of these Muslim nations where the laws and the culture are completely different when it comes to freedom, autonomy, and rights. And every single one of them would trade places with a woman here in the United States in a heartbeat. No hesitation, no second guessing. Yet somehow you still have women over here in the United States, especially a lot of liberal women, constantly talking about how they are oppressed, how the system is against them, and how America is this terrible place to live. And I'm just sitting here like, what are we even talking about right now? Compared to the rest of the world, you are living in one of the most free, prosperous, opportunity-filled countries that has ever existed in human history. And that's just a fact. That doesn't mean everything is perfect. That doesn't mean there aren't problems. Every country has problems. But the idea that people here are experiencing the same level of oppression as people living in authoritarian regimes is just completely detached from reality. And the other thing people have to understand is this. When you are the world's superpower, when you are the number one country economically, militarily, and politically, that comes with responsibility. Whether people want to accept that or not, that's just the reality. It's no different than how people here talk about wealth inside our own country. Democrats always talk about the top 1%, the billionaires, right? The wealthiest people in America have a responsibility to help those who are less fortunate. They say the wealthy should pay their fair share so the government can fund social services, childcare programs, healthcare programs, food assistance, all these different things designed to help people who are struggling. That's the argument they make all the time. But when you apply that same logic on a global level, when you start talking about America being in the top 1% of nations in the world, suddenly people don't want to see it that same way anymore. They don't want to see it the same way. Suddenly the idea that the United States has a responsibility to stand up against oppressive regimes, defend freedom, and support people fighting for their rights around the world becomes controversial. But the reality is, when you are in that position that America is in, leadership comes with the territory. Influence comes with the territory. Responsibility comes with the territory. But that's just my take on it. I want to hear what you guys think. Let me know down in the comment section. Do you agree with the Iranian woman was saying in that clip? Do you think moments like that expose how disconnected some of these conversations have become? Or do you see it differently? If you disagree, that's fine too. Let me know in the comments, hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your post notifications so you never miss an upload. I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.